Beautiful projects always start out with a beautiful plan. This is super important. In order to build a beautiful project, you definitely want to have a great design, and you want to have an execution plan down from 2Ds to 3Ds, all the way into your build sheet and even a takeoff material list. And we're going to talk about those today. To start this process, it's very important that you do some research. You're going to want to go to any online resources that you can find, like Pinterest and other things like that, even visit builders' websites, and start gathering data to create your vision, to understand what you want and why you want it, and maybe discover things that you didn't even think about, and start putting these together in a file. That way you have them all collectively in one place. You can get rid of what you don't want and make sure you're keeping only the things that really speak to you about your project. The next step is meeting with your builder. You want to include them in this process, and hopefully they're in tune with the design elements, or maybe they use a designer. Either way, you still want to collectively get together with them and share all those assets. Tell them what your vision is, tell them the things that you want, and the absolute things you don't want. This will help them really understand what you're doing here to put you guys on the same page. The other thing you're going to want to do is make sure that the aesthetics and the performance aligned. So what you're thinking of and the way it needs to be built, you need to make sure that that's all possible. That way you're on the same page with your builder. They know exactly what your vision is and what you want, and can give you the assurance that it can be done exactly the way you see it. Validate to accommodate. Make sure that you check in all your build lines and your setbacks and your code requirements to make sure you can actually build what you want, where you want, the size you want. This is very important. And you should have a lot of this information in your survey, or you can contact the city or wherever you live, the county, and determine what those things are. If you have no permitting and no code requirements, then obviously that doesn't play a part. The other thing is your HOA. A lot of people have HOAs, and HOAs can often be more strict than the city codes, meaning they want further setbacks and things of that nature to make the neighborhood stay in unison. We've experienced this, and trust me, you really don't want to get into it with an HOA when it comes to building structures. Last but not least, you want to make sure that your build lines and your setbacks are in accordance to the vision that you have with not only your structure, but your flat work, any hardscapes. Maybe you want a fire pit, maybe you want a fireplace. There's things that are involved with, especially fire, gas lines, and other structural things that are different. Or maybe there's an easement, maybe there's an electrical or a gas easement underground that you can't build on. All of these things should be in your survey. If not, you can contact the city and find out. Getting the visual. Now you take all of that data that you've established, that you spoke to your builder on, and you either work with the builder or their designer, and now you move into the 2D and the 3D phase. The 2D is basically going to be like a floor plan to show you the layout, to show you the size, show you where everything goes, what it looks like, where it's going to fall, and then you have your 3Ds. Your 3D should give you a very good visualization of what this is going to look like on your house, pretty close to reality, meaning getting the colors right, getting the finishes right, the roof lines right, even down to some of the textile details. Often you can even do, a television that's actually on. So it's pretty interesting how detailed you can get depending on the level you're rendering at, or their artist or designer is rendering at. Approval. Once you have your first round of 2D and 3Ds, that should be in accordance to all the other information that you've gathered. You now have the client look at them, approve them, make any changes they want to make. Look for small details. Make sure you're paying attention to the spatial relationship, how the roof lines fall, where the edges are, if the concrete has a radius, if it's done in wood, or it's done in a stained material, or it's done in a tile. You want to really represent that as much as you can. So when you're approving, if it's not clear in the rendering, get it in writing that that's what's going there. That way you're on the same page. Revisions. This is another thing. So obviously there's going to be revisions. Once you now can visually see it, obviously you're going to think of things and maybe you want to make a slight change. Often people make things bigger. They often will go to a different finish type, stone type, countertop type, changing the contour of the concrete or the foundation, whatever that is. Maybe they want to add some turf or some raised beds or some landscaping. In that revision process, you want to try to limit it to as few revisions as possible because it can become very confusing. So make sure you're really evaluating and thinking through it and having a conversation as to what all you want to go in this thing, and start that revision process, send it back over to the designer, and let them go ahead and render it up the way that you've decided with your revisions. Getting the final approval. Once you've made your revisions and you've sent them back, sometimes this can happen 2 or 3 times. We've had people completely change the whole build, change the structure and change everything, and we just kind of start over from scratch. So those things do happen, and that's okay. Just make sure you understand that there's probably going to be some additional costs incurred because you're changing everything. It's not just a minor change or an addition. When you give your final approval, if there's anything that's not clear, don't just talk about it. Make sure that you're making note of it, putting it in the file, adding it into the rendering the best you can. We like to send it back to the artist and have them captured as close as possible. And if we weren't able to get it exact, we'll make a note of it and the client will then sign off on it. Now that we have final approval on the renderings, we know what we're building, the size of it. Now we move into the electrical. We want to do a 2D electrical plan to make sure we're including every single electrical item that's going into this and potentially what may be coming later down the road. This also involves the municipalities, because when you're adding electrical, you have to determine if you have to go all the way to the electrical box, which could be somewhere located in the house or garage. If you're adding in heaters or you're adding in a substantial amount of electricity, you can't just tag it into the house. You have to literally go back to the electrical box. Again, this often happens with a sub panel or if you're adding in something that requires a 220. Those are things you want to be mindful of. Create a 2D plan that shows everything, every switch, every dimmer, every outlet, every fan, every light, anything that runs on electricity or maybe in the future that's going to run on electricity. Then we create a build sheet. What is a build sheet? A build sheet is going to show all of the engineering details, and it's going to show some of the other things that are necessary in order to complete your project. It may be down to your post base, how it ties back into the house. It's going to show your engineering, but in addition to that, it's going to show some of the other details that maybe has underground drains in it or whatever it may be. That's going to be your build sheet. This is what the builders and the trades are then going to take and build from. Whenever we're completing a design plan all the way to permitting, that is our build sheet. It puts everybody on the same page. So that's why it's super important that everything is included in this. Material takeoff. A material takeoff is going to be everything that is going to be needed for this project. What size ridge are you using? What size beams? What size posts? What size rafters? What kind of trim? What kind of fascia, soffit, roof, shingles? All of it. It all has to go in there, and the engineering to, again, make sure we're getting the right material to meet the code requirements for the specific build that we're building. Now that we have all of this established and we've got all these plans, we're going to put them together for the permit packet. Generally speaking, our permit packet will be sufficient to submit to HOA as well. It's going to probably have even more than the HOA requires, because we're going to show setback distances, we're going to show the sizes, we're going to show build lines, we're going to show elevations. All of these things will now go into this packet that are involved with all the steps that we've taken thus far. So this permit packet will have all of those things in there, including the house survey to show where everything's laid out, 2D, 3D, build sheet, and a takeoff. That way everybody's on the same page. The HOA, the city municipality, the homeowner, and the builder. Next, we do a full team review. Everything's been signed off by the client. So our project manager, our operations manager, and our account manager, it is a mandatory step that they take, that they review every single permit packet and every aspect of it before we submit. This helps us minimize and or avoid mistakes or things that were missed or overlooked or small details, because once that permit packet comes back, that permit packet is what we are giving directly to the city, to the HOA, to the homeowner, and to the guys to build it. Everyone is now working from that. So it's absolutely important that we get it perfect. And our final step here is we submit for permitting. We take that entire pack, we submit it to permitting, we submit to HOA if necessary, and then we wait for it to come back. Once that gets returned to us, that gets posted on the home. Everybody gets a copy of it digitally. everyone's on the same page. There's no second guessing or questioning or why isn't this or why isn't that, or we thought we talked about this, or you said we were doing that. It's already all signed off on. The homeowner has signed off on it. The city has signed off on it. The HOA has signed off on it. Our team has signed off on it. And now our builders have signed off on it. This keeps everyone on the same page, ensuring that we are building it exactly as promised. So as far as building something beautiful, it's absolutely important that you have a beautiful plan, a beautiful design, and a beautiful build sheet that accompanies it. That way, whatever you were thinking, you get delivered. That's how you meet expectations. We hope you enjoyed this and hope it's helpful for you to understand how to build and create a design plan that works. We're wishing you the very best luck on your build. And remember, always do the right thing.